Welcome to 502 Conversations. I'm Brian Kirby, and my guest for this episode is Todd Stiefel, founder and president of the Stiefel Freethought Foundation. Mr. Stiefel, thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm well, I guess. It is mid-February here. Things are warming up in Boston, so that's great. And where are you?
I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, and the flowers are coming out. They seem to think global warming is real.
Let me give you a proper introduction, and then we shall get started. As I mentioned, Todd Stiefel is founder and president of the Stiefel Freethought Foundation, and he is also president of Heretical Reason Productions and the founder and chair of the Sciencesaves campaign. He worked for 14 years for Stiefel Laboratories as the chief strategy officer, the enterprise leadership team chair, and a member of the board's executive committee. Todd co-led the teams that sold Stiefel Laboratories to GlaxoSmithKline, and in 2009, he transitioned from chief strategy officer to activist and philanthropist. To activist and philanthropist. And since then,
not philanderer.
No, and since then has gifted over $8.7 million to charitable causes. His activism has been covered by CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, ESPN, CBS Sports, Fox Sports, to name just a few. And he has appeared on CBS Sunday Morning, The Young Turks, HuffPost Live, The Takeaway, Christian Broadcasting Network, SiriusXM, and NPR, and now he has made it here to 502 Conversations. His writing has been published in On Faith, Friendly Atheist, and Free Inquiry magazine. Todd spearheaded the Foundation Beyond Belief International team that raised over $1 million for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and was the Light the Night national top individual fundraiser for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. When not raising funds and advocating for the principles he is passionate about, Todd executive produces independent movies including Super Troopers 2 and The Fair One, and most recently the documentary Shot in the Arm. He is also an avid music listener who loves to make people laugh. Todd's mission is to secure humanity's future by ensuring public policy decisions are based on love and reason rather than bias and dogma. Holy cow, that's some bio. What do you do in your free time?
You did your research, man. I need you to open up for me whenever I do a talk or something. That was great. Thank you.
Well, feel free to download that and just play it on your little iPhone and then run on stage.
Okay. I've got the legal permission now. Yeah. What do I do in my free time? I listen to a lot of Spotify, but that's probably not what your listeners are interested in.
Well, I was interested that you do have a playlist of 3,000 tunes on your website for people to peruse, so maybe we'll talk about that. But first, I do have a loaded question for you based on your principles and wanting to establish policy based on love and reason. I mean, as we're taping on February 15th, the day after February 14th, Valentine's Day, I must ask you, is love reasonable?
So that would depend. I think some love is unreasonable, but compassion and empathy is genetically hardwired, not just in our species, but in many others. Altruism within group can increase the chances of survival of individual genes and thereby has been selected. So I think to a degree, altruism is quite reasonable, but my first girlfriend relationship that was not reasonable.
I want to say up front, I should say that we recently met October 2022. We met at PsyCon. I can't recall exactly how, but I think Leonard Trammell might have been the intermediary.
Yes. Yeah, you guys were hanging out in the hallway. I was walking by.
And then I do remember we spoke again later after the screening of Shot in the Arm, a documentary. Like I said, you executive produced that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I want some background, and we should say right up front that the Stiefel Freethought Foundation, it doesn't give grants, it doesn't hire employees or fund filmmaking projects, correct?
No unsolicited grants. Lots of grants, but I find you. You don't find me.
Okay, I said that wrong, but I just wanted to get that out there so people wouldn't.
Hey, it's fair. Yeah. So please don't send me unsolicited grants.
Okay. You were very successful in the business. So how did it come about that you made the transition to philanthropy? I did it again. How did it come about that you made the transition to philanthropy?
Well, I was being trained to be a CEO or co-CEO with my brother. We were both sixth generation, our family's business. Got the crazy, fun, unusual, privileged opportunity to learn a business from the inside and really be mentored and raised to understand and run a large enterprise. And we ended up selling kind of by surprise. Like we basically got an offer we couldn't refuse in the middle of the economic downturn of 2008, 2009. And we were expecting to get lowballed, and instead, I was given. I was suddenly welcomed into the world of having money and no job. And I asked people I asked trusted advisors what they thought I should do, and they all recommended do something you're passionate about, do something you care about. So I got involved in secular activism because that is a passion of mine.
How did that become a passion of yours, secular activism?
That would be a combination of 9/11 and the new atheists primarily, as well as a lot of just things I'd experienced in my life. So being non-religious for a while, at that point in time, I knew very well that I needed to keep my mouth shut in business settings because it could be risky or problematic. And I saw the way the religious extremists were committing acts of terror around the world. And I saw how very similar extremists in the United States were striving very hard to make themselves a kind of immune to normal laws that affect everyone else, carve religious loopholes in the law, as well as trying to demonize all sorts of groups, especially the LGBT community. And I took umbrage with that and decided to make fighting the religious fundies a priority for myself.
So what are some of the organizations that Stiefel Freethought Foundation supports?
Oh boy. Secular Coalition for America, Center for Inquiry, American Atheists, from Religion Foundation, Secular Student Alliance, Camp Quest. I don't know. I have a huge spreadsheet.
Wow.
Those are some of the main ones off the top of my head. But I have a list on the Stiefel Freethought Foundation website of some of the main ones I donate to. But there's dozens of organizations.
Science, reason, humanism, secular organizations, American Atheists, freedom from religion. So I am sensing the theme there. You have an interesting origin story as well. Do you mind telling that?
Sure. I was born in upstate New York to humans. What kind of which origin story? I'm guessing you're not thinking my birth because that was probably conventional.
No, you had a nice you were talking about becoming engaged and then how you started Science Saves. Is this a good place to talk about that? Do you mind speaking about that?
Oh, well, the Science Saves program specifically, the origins of that were living as an immunocompromised person during the pandemic, particularly the early stages of the pandemic, where, I've really come to realize in many ways the same people who've been on the opposite side ideologically from me in church-state separation and secularism are often the exact same people who are on the opposite side of the aisle when it comes to science and the medical decisions the country takes to try to protect human life. And at the early stage of the pandemic, I was really troubled and heartbroken by how much people were pushing back against science and how much they were rejecting expert opinions and scientific consensus on how we could slow the virus. And here in North Carolina, we were having regular protests, reopen NC, which maybe that makes sense 2 years into the pandemic, but it definitely didn't make sense, a few weeks into lockdown when we didn't even really know what we were dealing with. And it was really scary because I see these people protesting and I couldn't go to the protests. I'm immunocompromised. I don't have a way I didn't have at the time have a way to go out in public at all, let alone to a protest filled with maskless you know, anti-science zealots. So I tried to devise a way that I could have a voice in that conversation and counter protest without being there. So I hired an airplane and flew a airplane ad over the over their protest. I protested their protests, saying fewer graves if we reopen in waves, and that definitely got some attention.
I think I remember that, actually. That was you?
That was me. Yeah.
Wow.
I wasn't sure which origin story you were going for, so that's the origin story of Science Saves. Because then my favorite part is I gotta say this. It's probably still online somewhere. I think on the News and Observer website. That's our local paper. They actually caught video of the protesters seeing the airplane banner the first time, and they all start looking up and cheering it. And they're like, "Yay, this is great!" And then somebody's like, "Hey, that's not us, bro." And then you could kind of see all their body language change, and they kind of like shrink down. It's priceless. It's really quite glorious watching them get disappointed.
So the organizations that you talked about, secularism, atheism, free thought, were you ever religious?
I was raised kind of a liberal Catholic, I guess, but I went to Sunday school. Got my first communion. I got confirmed even. I went to an all boys Catholic high school. I wore a gold cross around my neck into college. And that was something I always had my doubts about. I always kind of struggled with a little bit. I remember clearly being in carpool coming back from Sunday school and innocently saying something along the lines of, I'm confused. Like, there doesn't seem to be any evidence of this Jesus person. And the woman driving was very patient at first. She's like, oh, I understand, sweetie. I mean, but of course there is. Of course there is. There's the Shroud of Turin. Like, what is that? She's like, oh, well, it's this like burial cloth that they put on him and discovered 1,000 years later, and it's got his imprint of him right on the cloth. I was like, that's not evidence. That could be faked so easily. And then she got mad.
You actually said that? Oh, I thought these were thoughts you had to yourself.
Oh, no. I said that right to her. I was, I don't know, like 9, 10, 8, I don't know, somewhere in there. And yeah, I said it. I was like, but wait a minute. Like, that's so easy to fake. That's not evidence. And boom, that was like, what are you talking about? Of course that's evidence. It's clear evidence. Like, and I remember like her going from so patiently explaining it to so defensive like that. I was like, maybe she has something to hide here, or maybe she's hiding from herself, but like, I smell a rat here. This doesn't make sense. But yeah, it took till college before I really completely lost my faith. I took a class in Old Testament history, and there's nothing like hearing the origin stories of the Bible itself to make you realize it's just a bunch of myths like everything else.
So that was really, there were a lot of little things that all of a sudden just the light bulb went on, and you said, I can't do this anymore. So now
I always had questions, and then I had the answers.
And so you are an atheist, right?
Yes, okay. I'm an atheist and an agnostic.
Okay. Let me give you, I don't know, a perhaps somewhat perception of atheism. So you're an atheist. Atheism, I'm at best sketchy and immoral, self-centered, not to be trusted. At worst, you're a self-centered nihilist, and you guys are responsible for all the misery and harm in the world. So between those two, where do you fall on that scale, if you'll accept that question?
I fall on the scale of all of that, and whenever I can devour delicious babies like veal, I indulge myself.
Okay, so now throw back or push back on what I just said. So,
oh, do I have to? It's more fun just.
Well,
it's more
let me rephrase the question then. So
you don't have to. I get the question. I'm just having fun. No, I am. I mean, I think it depends on the person. Sure, there's bad apples of every bunch. So you could throw up a a straw man of fundamentalist Christians just as easily, but that doesn't mean it's accurate for all fundamentalist Christians, let alone, everyday average Christians. So yeah, yes, I'm sure there's bad apples in atheism that live up to that, but me and almost everybody I know who's an atheist are nothing like that at all. We just don't believe we don't believe any mythologies, or try not to believe in mythologies or superstitions. And just because we reject, one narrative of how the universe was created, ruled, and managed, doesn't make us bad people. We derive our morals just like Christians do, from learning from history, from watching how it impacts those around us, and from taking it from multiple sources. We just maybe pull from a more diverse range of sources than people who rely solely on the Bible.
Let me ask the question, maybe someone who's listened to this and they're religious, or they take that as where morality comes from. So you sold your business and you put the money into a foundation, and so you distribute it to do good. I mean, we talked about the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. You raised a lot of money there. You've given away millions of dollars to organizations. So someone might ask, well, what motivates you? I mean, if there's no deity establishing laws for you to follow, I mean, as an atheist, how do you ground that? What's going on?
I'm just trying to make the world a better place, man. I don't know.
Good.
Like, sometimes it feels like an uphill battle, and sometimes it feels like it's really hard to make a difference, even with putting in an enormous amount of time and money. But I'm just trying to make the world a better place and give back and make it easier for other people, so they have to deal with less fascism, less authoritarianism from various places, including religion.
Regarding your Freethought Foundation, we'll back up now and go back to sciencesaves.
Okay.
So you told me the origin story about that, and how you got the idea. And it's implemented with or in partnership with Center for Inquiry? How does it actually work?
Yeah, both. Yeah, it's a program with Center for Inquiry that my foundation endowed there to promote the life-saving value of science and scientific thinking. So they own and manage the project, but I am the chair of the project and the one who kind of created it with them.
And I see that you have something like over 24 ready-to-go lesson plans. What is it, K through 12 teachers? I mean, they're complete plans. You can review the plan. You can download PowerPoint. It's all complete there. So how does that come about? I mean, who writes those lesson plans? Where do you get the information for that?
Teachers. We have several teachers that have been helping us out. Bertha Vasquez is a teacher in Miami who has been really instrumental in helping organize that part of the effort. So yeah, they created plans not just for science classes, but English classes, math classes. Like for example, for math class, we can teach slope by showing the slope of increase in life expectancy over the last 100 or so years with the advent of new science and technologies such as vaccinations and clean water and hand washing. Little basic scientific discoveries like germ theory have led to enormous benefits in human life, and these lesson plans help teach kids about how science benefits them directly and their loved ones, while teaching something else more fundamental to what they're required to be teaching in the classrooms.
And what kind of feedback have you gotten? I mean, how long has that site been up and running, I should ask, too?
The site has been online about 2 years now, and we're still in the ramp-up phase, to be honest. So those lesson plans have been there for a while, and they seem to be really well liked, but we've got a bunch of other programs going on. We just finished an image contest for scholarship that we now get to judge. We have an annual video contest, sciencesaves video contest, for scholarship money for high school seniors that we do. So we completed the first one, and that was, I have to admit, pretty cool, because the winner sent us a really nice thank you, like, oh my gosh, this really made a difference. I wanted to go to school out of state, but I couldn't afford it, and this tilts the balance, and now I can go to the school I really wanted to for college. I was like, yes, that's cool.
Well, talk about that a little bit. So it's a scholarship for exactly how's that work? I imagine you have to go to the website, but talk me through what was this the
Yeah.
first?
Well, if you go to sciencesaves.org, you can learn more. There's my plug. Boom. So yeah, the scholarship for the video scholarship is, I don't recall the exact rules, but it's something along the lines of make a video that's like 20 seconds to 60 seconds showing how science has saved you or a loved one, or how it has really embittered your life or somebody close to you. So we got hundreds of submissions with really cool stories about like kids who survived like serious health scares because science saved them. They would have died. And we got lots of stories of people with like parents or grandparents who were also saved through the marvels of medical science. So it was really inspiring. And we have those top videos on our, I believe they're under a playlist on our YouTube page. Which is sciencesaves.org on YouTube. So yeah, it was really inspiring. It was really fun getting to judge that video contest and see these really just happy, warm videos of how science makes a difference.
Just out of curiosity, how many submissions did you get?
We had like 250 submissions,
Wow.
I think, in the first year. So we are hoping to get a lot more this year too.
Wow, that makes
yeah.
That's a lot of judging and a lot of.
It was fun. It was fun, and Bertha did a great job helping narrow it down to make it more bite-sized for folks. So, but yeah, it was just super cool, and I'm looking forward to this year's as well. So that one's currently active. I think the submission deadline's in early May this year. So if anybody knows a high school senior or looking for some extra funds for college, we have a total of $15,000 in scholarship money available again this year.
Sciencesaves.org, something you endowed specifically. Many of the other organizations you donate to. Talk about Heretical Reason production.
Single member LLC is, I guess, the official corporate structure of that. It's an investment company that I founded. It's got no employees. It sounds more impressive than it really is, but I'm using it to invest in different projects, from a social media app called Vouch, where you can share recommendations with friends and other people. And it's the exact opposite in many ways of a rating site, because you don't post negative reviews. You just post things you really like and can view things that like friends and people you think are cool really like. So that and mostly films. So something like 8 or 9 films I've invested in through Heretical Reason so far. 3 of them are out, and a bunch of them are in the works.
How do you find them? So people don't come to you. How do you find them?
They do now.
Here, watch my trailer, you mean, that kind of thing? So,
yeah. Well, before the first thing is getting in the first place. So my brother had done that. He went to Seattle after we sold the company, and he started a multimedia business. So doing music label and managing bands. Then he got into film, first executive producing, but he does real producing. I don't do real producing. So he actually is a producer. I'm an EP, extraneous producer. So he introduced me to the first one I invested in, but then once you invest in one and get a credit, suddenly people start hunting you down. And to the point of I've had to really he warned me early on, don't accept unsolicited pitches, because there can be legal ramifications to that. So only through an agent or a lawyer. But yeah, I get scripts and log lines and lookbooks all the time that I just delete. But yeah, it's pretty regular. But afterwards, after the first, you just start networking a bit, and you meet people, and then you meet other people, and you get introduced to folks, and yeah, the network kind of grows. And the first several things I did were all narrative films, but since then, now I've got 4 documentaries in the works right now, or in the process of coming out. So I've kind of shifted focus a little bit.
Well, can you talk a little bit about Shot in the Arm? Give a brief background on
Sure.
that. How did you get what is, I saw it, but just so people don't know, because it is starting to make its way around the country. I think it was in Florida. It's out in Santa Barbara coming up. Not sure how it's made. I'm not sure if it's being distributed to theaters at this point, like, you know, the art theaters, like we have one here in Dedham Community Theater, where it runs films such as that, and foreign films. It's out there at the film festivals, correct? So how did you get?
Yeah, it's doing the film festival circuit right now. Yeah.
And so what is Shot in the Arm?
Shot in the Arm is a documentary directed by Scott Hamilton Kennedy, who's an Academy Award nominated director. He was doing a documentary on the measles outbreak that happened in upstate, or just outside of New York, right before COVID broke out. So he's doing this documentary on the measles outbreak and the anti-vax movement, which directly led to that outbreak. And because shockingly, the kids who were getting measles were unvaccinated. It's really weird how that works. And he was in the middle of doing this and COVID breaks out. And now all of a sudden there's this whole other disease and a whole nother set of anti-science claims and arguments. And then that devolves into anti-COVID vaccinations as well. So really it's a look primarily at the anti-vax movement and the damage it's caused and the outbreaks it's led to and some of their tactics. So it as well as a look at some of the people who are, you know, actual experts in this field who research it and understand it, and also people on the front lines. So nurses, doctors, it's kind of the story from both sides of the pushback against vaccines.
You got some big names in there. Peter Hotez, right? You actually landed, I say you, I know you're the executive producer, but I guess it wasn't you. Scott Hamilton Kennedy. Can I say the director then?
Sure, yeah.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he got a great set of interviews with him. It was surprising that Robert RFK Jr. spoke so freely and openly. You had Dr. Paul Offit was a main figure in there. So you executive produced it. And so in this case, if you don't mind me saying so that means you're funding it, right? You're not involved in okay. So people know what executive produce means on this level. You're funding the project, but you're not involved with it day to day.
No.
Right. So how did you?
I'm helping connect them to my network and stuff, but yeah, it was nearly a completed project when I got involved.
So how did you?
You're about to ask how?
Yes. So how did you get involved with it then?
Kind of funny. Let's come full circle here. Because of Science Saves, actually, we were looking at trying to potentially do some marketing in New York City about the polio outbreak that was going on a few months ago, which is still ongoing, by the way. It's coming back, according to the people I've talked to who know what's going on in the area. It's not gone at all. We're just waiting for the next paralytic case to pop up. But yeah, that's a whole different terrifying thing. So I was looking for people in that area who may know about it or may be able to help us with it or might be able to partner with it. And I came across an article about a group doing work educating the Jewish community in New York about vaccinations and the value of vaccinations and pushing back against the intentional effort to try to get Jewish people to turn against vaccines. They were being directly marketed to by the anti-vaxxers. So I'd come across this article with this organization there and this person who was working on it, a woman named Blima Marcus. So I just cold called her. I was like, hey, I think the work you're doing is really cool. I work with this group, Science Saves, and I would love to find a way to maybe work together to see if we could help each other out. And, you know, cold calling, you never know how it's going to go. I couldn't get through. I left a message. I get a call back a few days later and had a great conversation with her. And she's like, hey, by the way, like, you really should meet this guy, Scott. I was just in a documentary about vaccines. And there you go. That's how we met. She introduced me to Scott. and I ended up partnering with Scott and his team, and we're partnering with Blima and sponsoring a vaccine conference in New York City in the spring.
Is that professionals only? Is that open to the public? Or do you know yet?
I believe it's professionals only. It's still, well, they have locations locked in. I'm not sure the status of invite list and the like, but they have some pretty significant names in the vaccine world coming. And it's not fully public yet, but it's public enough. I feel comfortable talking about it in vague terms.
You've really piqued my interest about this polio thing that's happening, because we heard about the one case that was an adult. But what you're saying there is that, you didn't say this, but what comes out of that is that polio virus is circulating in the population. It's here. And we're protected from it because we're vaccinated. That's
some of us.
Well, I'm sorry. Those of us that are vaccinated are
Seriously.
protected. But it doesn't mean that because we're protected against it, it has no place to go. It's still circulating. That's the issue.
We were looking at one of the sciencesaves calls. We were looking at vaccination rates in New York, and there's counties that are only like like kids that are supposed to be vaccinated, like around the 2-year range. It's like only like 60% of them are vaccinated for polio. I mean, we're going to see paralyzed kids, like almost for sure. Like it's going to happen again. It's coming. People back in iron lungs, and it's complete madness. These anti-vax scene people have really, they're bringing back plagues upon humanity, and they're doing it intentionally through their own ignorance and desire to believe what they want to, through their own biases. They want to believe this for whatever reason. It makes them, either they're profiting off of it, or they're want to believe it because it makes them feel better to have an explanation for why their kid is sick, even if the explanation's wrong. And yeah, it's going to harm people. And as somebody who's immunocompromised, whose body does not remember vaccines very well, yeah, it's scary, because I think my body will remember the polio vaccine I had as a kid. It does a pretty good job of remembering the vaccines I had as a kid, but it forgets a lot of the vaccines I get as an adult. So I hope I have protection against polio, but I'll tell you what, if I get polio because of anti-vaxxers suppressing vaccine rates, I'm going to be pretty pissed off.
I can imagine. I highly recommend people see Shot in the Arm just for those bits with RFK Jr. It's just astounding what he was saying. And I'm surprised that you were able to get the cut that you did. I mean, but I can't ascribe motivations. I mean, I like to think that there's a belief there that they're convinced is true somehow. So I'm not going to, I don't know the ins and outs of if there's a big anti-vax conspiracy. Like people say there's big pharma conspiracy. I don't know if there's big anti-vax conspiracy. I'm not sure. But it was frightening what the rhetoric, the results of the rhetoric, especially when you talked about the South. Anyway, I highly recommend people see the movie if they get an opportunity to. I'm hoping it comes to the Northeast.
Yeah, it will hopefully be available sometime after we kind of get through the festival circuit, but it's a little bit unknown whether how many theaters it'll be in, if any, or if it'll go straight to streaming. That's all in the works at the moment. But yeah, I was really thrilled with the way the movie came out. I was blown away by that interview, and frankly enjoyed a little bit watching him stammer on camera trying to wiggle out. I don't know if there's really like a anti-vax conspiracy, but I do know there is an anti-vax business. There is a business model. People are making a lot of money selling books, selling bullshit supplements, selling ideas, running organizations, even making, $400,000 a year running nonprofits that promote not getting vaccinated. So people are making a lot of money causing other people to die of measles and soon to be polio and COVID.
I don't want to end there. So let's talk about some of the good work that your foundation is doing. I mean, we talked about sciencesaves.org. We talked about Heretical Productions. Give me something else that's good that we can close on.
Well, good it might be a stretch. I think it's good work, but it isn't necessarily happy. I've been funding films and projects against Christian nationalism. So I've given a couple 100,000 in grants to different groups, and I am invested in a movie, a documentary as well, that's a little isn't done yet, is in editing right now, but really trying to shine a light on and understand the forces of Christian nationalism in this country and how powerful they are, how they're organized, why they're organized, and the blurring of religion and politics.
I want you to define that just a little bit so it doesn't get taken out of context. You're not funding anti-Christians. You're funding anti-Christian nationalism. So Christian nationalism, It's got the nationalism word in there. So do you mind you don't have to talk much about it, but just unpack it a little bit so people understand what you are talking about. You're not anti-Christian, so to speak.
Correct. I'm well past my angry atheist days. I know a lot of people go through that phase when they first become an atheist, and I definitely went through it too, but I'm well past that. I don't care. I don't even really usually like discussing religion anymore. I'd rather just be friends with people and chill out and have a good time.
So talk about Christian nationalism. What is it with Christian nationalism?
Christian nationalism is the merger of patriotism and Christianity. It's frankly, it's theocracy. It's a desire for theocracy. It's a desire for the country to be run based on biblical values and often biblical law, as well as oftentimes a revisionist history that this country was founded as a Christian nation for Christians. Unfortunately, it is also sometimes, not necessarily often, but it is sometimes conflated with specifically white Christian nationalism, such as the Ku Klux Klan, who were and remain a white Christian nationalist terrorist organization. Basically, it's not coincidental that they burn crosses and there is a cross emblem on their robes. They're a white supremacist organization, but they are also an organization that advocates for a Christian nation and in their own materials. So it's kind of this blending of theocracy with Christianity. So imagine the desire to go back to medieval Europe, or even the Taliban, or the Ayatollahs in Iran, but with Christianity.
Okay, I'm not sure if we ended on a good note that I was hoping for. You did define it, though, and that's one of the things you're working against, which makes perfect sense to me. So it's a scary situation.
Frankly, it's really a lot of it right now is more simply a means for political power, and that the Republican Party figured out that they could pull the lever of religion to get people out to vote for them. So it's kind of an unholy alliance, if you will. But there was recent polling that PRRI, Public Religion Research Institute, announced last week, and it found that 53% of Republicans are either Christian nationalists or Christian nationalist sympathizers, meaning they hold some of those beliefs. So this is a real and powerful thing that's going on right now. So you want to talk music? You want to end on music? Would that be more fun?
You do have a playlist of over 3,000 songs, right? I do. I think Scott Hamilton Kennedy sent out a fun email a couple of days ago about his cover band for the Police. I didn't know he was a bass player. I'm actually a bassist. I went to music school.
Oh, are you really?
I have a master's degree in performance. I don't do it much anymore. But yeah, so I see him with the bass. I'm thinking, oh, there's like kind of an in when I communicate with him. So let's talk a little bit about music, because I like most music, and some of the stuff, I mean, you've got an incredible variety there, from Billy Joel to Metallica. It's like this list of just everything. I mean, how do you curate a list like that?
The origin story there is before my son was born, and he's now almost 20. I saw an article about a father who was dying and wanted to leave something for his child to remember him by. So he made a bunch of videos so the kid could always know him. And I was like, that's really cool, but gosh, that's morbid. I was like, I'm not dying, but I like the idea of leaving something for your kids to know you by. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do music. I listen to music almost all the time. I listen to music constantly. So I built a playlist of like, at the time, it was 169 songs, but I was literally putting CDs into the computer back then and individually copying each song onto this playlist. And it was super fun. It was super fun. And then I did the same thing for my daughter before she was born. And then I just kind of got into it. And then I did it for my godchildren and my nieces and friends of the family. And then I ran out of people to name them after. But I've been literally building playlists for like 20 years ever since then, all in that theme of kind of rock related genres, whether it's punk or heavy or folk or Celtic or origins, like older blues that like influenced rock. But basically kept my favorite songs in rock and rock adjacent. And I've been doing it for 20 something years now. And there's no repeats in the mixes. Each mix is something different from the old one. So you can just combine them all together. So that 3,000 song playlist is really like 25 different playlists with unique songs in them. And I just hunt around Spotify. I mean, I'll listen to tons of playlists.
Okay, now it makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
That's where it all came from.
I'll go through like, the Rolling Stones list of the top 500 rock songs of all time, and then some random dude's list of the 200 best bass riffs of all time. And I mean, I've just been doing this for years.
We talked about sciencesaves.org, Stiefel Freethought Foundation, your playlist. Anything else there?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that coming up on March 26th is our second annual National Science Appreciation Day. Last year, we got 13 governors, I believe, to sign proclamations, and we're working on it again this year, trying to get even more states to acknowledge National Science Appreciation Day, which is essentially just a day to reflect on our gratitude for science and what it does for us in our daily lives. And the date is specifically set for the day Jonas Salk initially announced positive results on his first polio vaccine. So that all the more relevant with what's going on in the world today. So yeah, that's coming up in a few weeks and just something cool to look out for.
That is the upbeat note I wanted to end on. That's very good. So March 26th, Science Appreciation Day.
March 26th.
All right.
Yep, March 26th.
Todd Stiefel, you have been my guest here on 502 Conversations. I thank you so much. It's Todd Stiefel, Stiefel Freethought Foundation, sciencesaves.org, Heretical Productions, and that's Shot in the Arm. Watch for that documentary. And don't forget, March 26th, Science Appreciation Day. Thank you so much.